Join the meeting.
So we have been tempted, social distancing, and extra sanitizing to get the good times going again. This time, roll out the red carpet.
DA's office. Major number.
You are still.
Hello, how's everyone? Hi, this one is.
Okay.
Supervisor?
Yes.
We can start whenever you want.
It's 4 o'clock. Okay. So what I'll ask people to do is put their phones on mute so we don't get feedback.
Could everyone please put your mics on mute? We're getting too much feedback, please.
That worked.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start. First of all, I am so grateful to everyone for joining us here this afternoon. I want to thank you for setting aside the time to participate in the 5th District Days of Dialogue series for our Antelope Valley community. We are joined by an amazing woman, Lilia Galindo, our local facilitator who specializes in mediation and conflict resolution, and I really do appreciate everything you've done to get us to this point. She and her team will be running our meetings and leading it in smaller breakout groups. My hope for today's discussion is to provide the opportunity to each of you to play an active role in reshaping our future. As we work to build a better Antelope Valley for the next generation, we all must commit ourselves to these critical conversations. Through this process, we aim to increase awareness, share perspectives, gain understanding, build trust, and I emphasize build trust, and improve relationships between community members and law enforcement. In addition to today's meeting, we will be hosting a second meeting on Thursday, August 13th. We'll host follow-up meetings on a month-by-month basis as we keep the momentum going.
Terry Baez, join the meeting.
This is an opportunity for reflection and accountability across the board. The Antelope Valley is a special place. Word has gotten out given the increases in population.
Join the meeting.
Sorry.
Bishop Hearns.
Hi, Bishop Hearns. Word has clearly gotten out given the increases in population over the last several years. You all know that. You live up there. I am proud to serve this region, and I understand my responsibility to engage with all of you to make the necessary changes for our community. I want to thank Mayor Paris and Mayor Hoffler, our members of the Lancaster and Palmdale City Councils, and the city managers for joining us here today. And I want to thank you also to the representatives from Assemblyman Lackey, Senator Wilk, and Congressman Garcia's office for joining us today. Thanks to the public
Join the meeting.
workers, Sheriff Captain Weber and Sheriff Captain Schaefer, and Fire Chief Osby and Captain Sullivan as well. And of course, thank you, our community organization, for representing the heartbeat of the Antelope Valley. Bringing everyone to the table is important, and honestly, it is meaningful for effective change. I'm thankful to every person here for lending your voice and your vision to this cause. Together, we will serve and strengthen this community. The Antelope Valley is worthy of our attention and best solutions. Residents deserve the best and should be ready to put their best foot forward. And we couldn't do it without all of you. Now I would like to introduce Renata, our facilitator for the Days of Dialogue series. We are grateful for her expertise and her willingness to play a huge part in today's discussion. Now she will offer full details on logistics for tonight's gathering and the rules of engagement. But again, I want to thank you all. I want you to know your voice does matter. And what we discuss is going to provide us with a blueprint moving forward so that we can all heal. So with that, Renata.
Good evening. My name is Renata Valerie, and I will be one of your facilitators. I'll be the lead facilitators, but we have some really wonderful folks in the room, very talented at facilitating, and so they will be the ones leading the discussion. So what I'd like to do is just have all the facilitators please identify yourselves as I continue to admit folks into the room.
Good afternoon. I'm Alonzo Braggs, and I am a resident of Palmdale.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Picata, and I'm a master's student at California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Good afternoon. My name is Manuela Aguilar, and I am a recent graduate of the master's program of NCRP at Cal State Dominguez Hills.
Hello, I'm Marley Miranda. I'm a graduate of Cal State Bakersfield AV campus, and I live in Palmdale as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandy Cook, Program Director with Restoration Community Development Project.
I know there are other facilitators here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Yusuf. I'm a mediator and resident of Lancaster.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Belden. I'm a Los Angeles resident and a mediator for tonight's facilitation.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Rodriguez. I'm a current grad student for Cal State Dominguez Hills.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthias Sieber. I'm a Master of Dispute Resolution student at USC Gould.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharif Valentine. I am a master's student at Cal State Dominguez Hills.
Is that everyone that's online?
Hi, this is Jay Duke. I'm with the Antelope Valley Boys and Girls Club.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Gomez. I'm also a graduate student at Cal State Dominguez Hills.
Good afternoon. My name is Patricia Washington. I will also be joining in mediating today's discussion.
I'm Richard Lola, Mayor Pro Tem City Palmdale.
Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon. My name is Janie Hodge. I'm with
Pamela
Walter.
Join the meeting.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. My name is Janie Hodge. I'm Executive Director of Paving the Way Foundation in Lancaster.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Janine Kabar. I'm a master's student at Dominguez Hills NCRP program.
Good afternoon. My name is Miriam. I'm a resident of Lancaster, and I'm a facilitator for our dialogue today.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Torres. I've got family in Lancaster, and I'm at Dominguez Hills.
Okay, well, these are some of your facilitators for today, and as they come into the room, we'll certainly have a chance to meet them all. I'd like to tell you how we are going to engage for the next next few hours, next 2.5 hours that we have together. A dialogue is a conversation. It is not a debate. We're here to learn from each other, to share different ideas, different experiences, and different perspectives. And as
Join the
such,
meeting.
when we get together and we eventually get into our small groups, we will have a chance to contemplate some questions. And what we're hopeful will happen is that as a group, you will come up with one, hopefully 2 recommendations that the supervisor can use to move forward to help the communities of this valley thrive and be happy and create peace and really address some of the emerging issues that we've been dealing with, not just recently, but over time. Change only occurs from within the organizations, and all of you, from what I can see from this wonderful list that I have, you are in positions to make that change occur. So we're going to be using your time, your talent, and your treasure to look at and explore ideas, how we, as a group, collaboratively can work together. Now, we do have some discussion guidelines, and they're really very simple. We ask that everyone respect one another, that if one person is speaking, that you listen and let that person have their opportunity. I ask that you listen for the future to emerge, because it's only through conversation that we actually have a chance to create change. We're asking that you not engage in any aggressive or assaultive, abrasive speech. I know behind every experience there's a strong emotion, but we ask that we be respectful and civil in our discourse. We also ask that each of you allow the other individuals in your group to have a chance to speak. So please don't monopolize. While you'll have your opportunity to share your story, we ask that you not monopolize, because then you take away the voice from everyone else. And we really want to hear everyone's thoughts, everyone's opinion, everyone's idea. Those are some general ground rules that we have. Nothing too harsh, but I ask that you honor them. So as I scroll through my screen, if I could see your hands up saying that you agree to the ground rules, especially around the confidentiality when you're a small group, that you don't go out and share what was discussed in your small group. Hands up, please, because I'm looking. Okay, let's see who else I'm missing. There's 4 pages.
I am Bishop Henry Hearns. I don't know where I fit, but I'm here.
Okay.
Put your hand up.
Ansar Muhammad, the Executive Director of the Helper Foundation, is online as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all. For this moment, what we're going to do, we have what is called a pre-survey. It's a poll. We're just going to ask for some general demographic information. I will launch the poll. You'll have 2 to 3 minutes to fill out the poll, respond to it, and then I can share the results with everyone in the room. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm launching the poll. You should be able to see it on your screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh. Oh my goodness. Someone's.
Someone put us on hold.
I know. I don't know where it's coming from. Mute it.
Someone put you on hold.
Oh.
Professor, the person with the microphone on, their square should light up as yellow. So if you scroll through each page,
Thanks for holding.
the
We
yellow,
appreciate your time and patience.
the yellow
Please
frame
stay on the line.
You're on
We'll be
mute.
back
I
in
can't hear
just
you.
a moment.
Yeah. I'm scrolling. I just need to go back a few more pages to see where they are. Ah, right here.
There we go.
Oh, good trick about the yellow square.
There's 4 pages, so I had to scroll back. Oh, we have Mr. Olsby joining us.
It was pleasant music.
Put in how would you hear it?
Okay. So we have maybe a minute and a half to complete the polling.
That background music was kind of nice. It was kind of like Jeopardy, right?
Yeah.
According to the survey, it appears that the topic being covered today will be specifically in regards to the African American community. Does it stop at that, or are there going to be other minority groups included?
All minority groups are included, but we focused on this because this was such a hot topic a few weeks ago in our community.
Got it.
I would say that that's a good starting place because that's really how Renata and I got to talking about the need to have better communication, especially within the African American community. So that's a starting point, but that doesn't mean that other minority groups are off the table. I think that it applies across the table in terms of respecting everybody.
Okay. I was keenly interested in joining today because of the, severe religious discrimination in the area, but I also have African American children, so hey, bonus.
Well, then you're more than welcome to be a part of this.
So right now, about 77% of you have voted. I'll give you maybe another minute, and then I'll close the polling.
Patricia Morales. Join the meeting.
It may be helpful to do like a really quick tutorial for people that are unfamiliar on how to raise their hand or mute their microphone.
Okay, let me move the poll out so I can see everybody's face. Just a moment. So for those of you who don't know how to mute your mic, you can go to the bottom of your screen. There's a microphone. You can click on that. You can mute it, or above your name, you can click mute and mute yourself.
Again in a few seconds.
Okay, almost done. Maybe another 40 seconds or so, and then the polling will be closed. know 40 seconds seems like a long time, but it really isn't. I'm just trying to make sure I see that everyone's mic is on mute so as not to disrupt. We still have folks joining us, so please show them just a little grace.
Hello, this is Lilia Galindo from Café con Leche Radio. How are you?
Hi, Lilia. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I just want to include in the topics the Latino community. You know, I feel I was seeing the statistics today, and we are 60% in Palm Belt, 44% in the Antelope Valley, and I still feel that we are being ignored. We have a lot of problems right now with the COVID-19. It's the people who is dying more, and also the census that we are not going to be counted. We are seeing what the President Trump is proposing to cut the census before that should be done. And we know the people who is afraid to ask census are the undocumented community and the people that has low income. I just want to put this in the mind of everybody, because really I feel that usually they forget that we are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lilia. But just to let you know, we didn't forget you were here. As I responded just a few seconds ago, the supervisor and I had a chance to speak at a moment in our community's sort of, this past few months, a moment where there was a young African American male that had lost his life, and we really wanted to kind of create a sense of cohesiveness, but also address some of those issues that we were hearing within the community. It's not in any way, this dialogue is not in any way to exclude any group, any population. It is a starting point, and once you get in your group, you will find that there's a question that really talks about what other issues that each of you may find that are emerging in the community that you'd like to have addressed. So you will have your opportunity to talk about those things. So today is just the beginning of the conversation. It's not the end. So now I'm going to share the results of the poll, because I did close it out. And so let's share the results and you all can see. So we have male, 41%, female, 58%, African Americans, 28%, Caucasian, white, 51%. We have our Hispanic, Latino community present at 20%, Native American, 4%, Middle Eastern, 1%, multi-ethnic, 5%, Asian Pacific Islander, 3%, and other, 6%. Age ranges, again, it varies, as do in all dialogues. 18 to 25 is 8%, 26 to 35, 6%, 36 to 45, 19%, 46 to 55 is 14%, and 56 to 65 is 35. 65 to 75 is 16%, and 75 and over is 3%. So when we look at our backgrounds, our work experience, we have 9% of our folks that are connected to our arts and culture, which is great. I mean, all of this is great. Our business leaders, 21%. Our civic nonprofit leaders are 33%. Our educators, 20%. Healthcare, 9%. And interested community is 26%. So thank you all. I think this is one of the questions that really resonated when I started thinking about drafting is, how do we feel? I mean, as a community, we're dealing with a lot, not just locally, but nationally. We're dealing with our children being at home, with our health mandates. So how are we feeling? So over the last 3 months, 48% of you say you're feeling hopeful and positive. 18% are feeling sad. 31% feeling frustrated or scared. 14% angry and enraged, 6% hopeless, 36% motivated, 14% confused. You have 31% that, you're aware, you're awake, you're processing, where do we go next? Worried and anxious, that's about 29%. And all of the above, all of those feelings at 23%. Question 6, how would you rate your understanding and knowledge of Black history, racism, and social injustice? 60% of you say you're well informed. 40% say you need more knowledge. Then as we move into our very last question in our poll, how important is ensuring your self-care and the care of others as you participate in social change? And overwhelmingly, there's 90%. Tell your story, whatever your story is, whatever your experience, we want to hear it. In hearing that, just know that at some point you have to allow others to speak. We know there's emotion tied to every statement, and we welcome that emotion, but what we cannot allow is that emotion to take up space in the room where others won't have a voice.
We'll ask that everyone mute, please.
E and E Love Foundation. Let me turn off your mic. Oh, there's someone else coming in the room. Just give me a second. Okay. The next thing I want to share is how we're going to engage in the dialogue. You'll have 75 minutes in your small group. You have 3 questions. From those 3 questions, we're hopeful that during the course of your conversation, you will be able to come back at the end of the 75 minutes with some viable action items, some recommendations. Please do not offer up a solution if you haven't really thought it through. We really want to get your best thinking right now, today, in this moment. You are the most valuable resource this community has. So we welcome your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, your recommendations. But we would like you to stay focused. So at the end of your 75 minutes together, you'll be able to come back when we rejoin as a large group and present at least 1 or 2 solid recommendations based upon your conversation. Can we all agree that that is going to be our end goal for today? May I see your thumbs up, your hands up? I'm scrolling. I just want to double check.
Renata and Ms. Barger, I have another commitment right now. I certainly want to be a part of this. I've talked to Mr. Bosbeck. He will keep me informed. But I have someone waiting for me here. She's been waiting for about 45 minutes already. So
okay,
please excuse me, and I'm very delighted to be a part of this group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm getting ready to send you into your small groups. This will be random. This is Zoom magic. And you will be in group with a facilitator and a scribe. I don't see all my scribes yet, but I'm sure they're coming. But the facilitator is ready. They are present. And if you give me a few minutes, I will create the breakout rooms. You will receive an invitation. Please click join when the breakout rooms are created. Just give me a few minutes. Somebody. Okay, so
Juanita, did you want me to do my thing?
yes, Marquita, if you could, please. We have Marquita Campbell. She wrote a beautiful piece for us, which I thought would be very helpful in framing our work today. So Marquita, if you would.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us today. I just, this was set on my heart, and I just wanted to share this moment with you as I have experienced everything along with the community as well. I'm a Palmdale resident, I will also be probably a co-facilitator and scribe, and I've been a part of this process for a while as well. Let me clear my throat just a moment, please. Okay. At this time, we have an opportunity to participate. Just a minute. I'm sorry. At this time, we have an opportunity to participate in reshaping the future narrative. Is racism age-old? Of course it is. Is it the same old, same old? Not this time. What is different is that lynching used to be an invited event. Now it sparks outrage. What is different is the backdrop, the context, the framework. When in the history of our existence that the heinous death of a man, let alone a Black man, has taken on a global response that stands up to say no more? This is a pivotal moment. We cannot employ ineffective, antiquated methods to address today's opportunity. People are listening. We don't have to yell. People are asking. We don't have to demand. People are hearing. We just have to speak. This time is different. We get to respond. We don't have to react. Let's try something different. That is all we ever really wanted, was to be heard, seen, and respected. We are here. Let's recognize the opportunity. If we go into auto drive and slip back into the usual behavior, we will miss the moment, because like it or not, the world will make those changes with or without us. That is where we are. There will be changes. Don't miss the opportunity to be the driving force to shape history. We are truly at the helm. We have the spotlight. The world is listening. They have embraced our outrage, our anguish, our pain. They really do see it. They see it in New Zealand, Hong Kong, Italy, France, Canada, England, Syria. They see it and they see us. Let's be receptive. This time, let our response evolve as the world is evolving. Let's talk. If we're going to reshape the narrative,
Marquita?
Okay, sorry, my Zoom went out. If we're going to reshape the narrative, let's start with the fact that the voices and the behaviors of the few do not represent the whole. The loudest voices are not the majority. They're simply the most visible. And sometimes we need to get out of our own way. Change is not just one-sided. Sometimes we need to be willing to be collaborative. Let's do something different. We all know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And in the end, this is the culmination of what it was all about. The marches, the water hoses, the dogs, the beatings, the protests. That was not intended to be our perpetual existence. That was all for a purpose, and we need to recognize where we are in the journey. Look, racism is as old as time, fact. But I reiterate, while this expression of racism is a throwback to a brutal time in our history, again, it is no longer socially embraced. Nothing is the same. There is a prolific global movement. People have physically demonstrated their solidarity. They have stood up and showed up. They are waiting for us at the table. Let's show up. Now is the time to talk. And as they say, if not now, when?
Thank you, Marquita. I thought it was such, the writing, Marquita's writing just told a story of this moment where we all are here together to create change. Not change for tomorrow, but change for the future, and hopefully it's sustainable change. Again, I can't reiterate enough how important each of you are to creating that change. So with that, please accept your invitations and let the dialogue begin.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Good.
We're just going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to join. And while everyone is filling into the room, can we please just go around the room and introduce ourselves? I'll begin. My name is Joanne Belvin. I'll be facilitating this group. And we can just go in random order.
This is Chuck Bostwick. I work for Supervisor Kathryns Barger in her Lancaster office.
Good evening.
I guess I'll go. I'm Jay Duke. I'm with the Antelope Valley Boys and Girls Club.
Good evening.
I'm John Joyce. I'm publisher of the Acton Agua Dulce News.
Good evening.
Pat Tanner. I'm one of the biblical counselors at Grace Chapel.
Good evening.
My name is Jeremy Hartley. I'm one of the pastors at Grace Chapel in Lancaster.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Jessica Berniez, and I'm a Children's Services Administrator with Department of Children and Family Services, and I'm also a resident of Lancaster.
Good evening.
And I'm Francis Eyre. I am retired.
Good evening. Not all at once. Would anyone volunteer to go next? I see Miss Linda Vaughn in the room. Would you like to introduce yourself to the group? Your mute is muted, Miss Vaughn.
Sorry about that. That's you didn't hear me before. My name is Lilia Vaughn. I am a union activist for the California School Employees Association and retired.
Good evening. And would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the group that has not? Okay, and it looks like there are 12 of us in total. So I'm going to begin the discussion. Some of the ground rules to reiterate. Number one, feel free to speak up, share your thoughts and opinions, but do not monopolize the conversation. Number two, we will not engage in personal attacks, hostile or abrasive language. Number three, we will not use expletives or racial slurs. Number four, trust your facilitator to guide the conversation and keep the group focused and the conversation on track. Number five, we will listen respectfully and actively and with an ear to understanding each other's point of view. Number six, we're going to be open to changing your mind when disagreements occur and keep the door open for the conversation to continue. Number seven, observe the confidentiality in the conversation and keep it in mind throughout. Number eight, the success of the conversation depends upon your participation. Number nine, treat everything you hear as an opportunity to learn and grow. And last but not least, number 10, all changes happen through conversation. And Renata briefly went over the differences between a dialogue and debate, and this is not a debate. This is a dialogue, which is collaborative, focused on finding common ground, where we're listening to understand, and we're temporarily suspending our own individual beliefs to create an open-minded attitude, an openness to being wrong, and an openness to change. A dialogue also assumes that many people have pieces of the answer, and that together we can put them into a workable solution. Okay, so I'm going to present the first question now to the group. Oh, and I have a quick question also for the group. Who is the assigned scribe?
I am.
And who is that?
Linda Vaughn.
Okay, great. I wasn't made aware.
Linda Vaughn.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mrs. Vaughn.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to open it up now with the first question. And I'm trying to decide what's the best way that we can go around the room. There's 11 of you that will be, there's 10 of you that will be answering. So maybe we can all, everyone could just take a number. I'll just give them as they appear on my display. Mr. Martin Tanner, you're going to be 1. Mr. Chuck Bostwick, you're going to be number 2. Miss Jessica Bernius, you're going to be number 3. And please excuse me if I mispronounce your names. Mr. Francis, you're going to be number 4. Mr. J. WPE, that's what your display is showing up as. You're going to be number 5. Mr. Tim Moore, you're going to be number 6. Mr. John Joyce, you're going to be number 7. And Mr. Jeremy Hartley, you're going to be number 8. And let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, 9. I think I missed one. Who did not get a number? Did everyone get a number? Okay. Great. Okay, so we're going to start with group member number 1 and the first question. The first question that we're asking this evening is, what actions are needed to reform systematic racism and policing? For Mr. Tanner.
That's a huge question. Ultimately, I mean, we've already discussed that there needs to be conversation. I'm not sure exactly what format you would put that in. I would tell you that it's probably going to take quite some time to really get down to the attitudinal motivations and determine exactly what is going on. There are going to be some conversation about systemic versus non-systemic parenting practices are going to be involved. That's just a huge question. I think probably coming, this is way too soon to put together an action item, but probably coming together in groups like this would help. I hesitate to say that education is going to be the way to make it happen, but building relationships between people that disagree will probably be a huge help in that.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to go to number 2, Mr. Chuck Bostwick. The same question.
I don't know if it would be bad form of me to beg off of talking. As a representative of Supervisor Barger, I'm more of an observer of all of this. That's really my role rather than a person whose opinions are being proffered for the rest of the community. So.
Oh, I see. So you'd like to remain silent in the conversation?
Yes.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. And now we're going to go to you, Ms. Bernius.
Just kind of going back to what Mr. Tanner said, it is a huge question, a big undertaking to try and develop thoughts and processes behind really, like, I would say the reason that we're here today is just trying to answer that question for everybody, for the community, for everybody as a whole in the United States. The only thing that I can think of that, at least since all of this started happening in my own experiences, it's just randomly enough, I received a video from the original administrator of the Palmdale DCFS office. And it was a video from Paul Vischer, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He is the creator of the Veggie Tales. The video that he created was to give a really succinct overview of the laws within the United States, going back from just when, 13 colonies and the civil rights movement and going through all of that, but looking at the laws of just the United States as a whole, how they were created and how they're so deeply ingrained in racism and the laws that really held back a lot of the African American community, just from simple things like housing laws and how the distribution of loans for home ownership, how that has been a problem that has been around for centuries. We need to truly, I think, educate a lot of the people, especially law enforcement, but I think that as a community as a whole, if you're able to educate how deeply ingrained these things are, how long they have been occurring, and the incredible undertaking that we really truly have to make this right, I think that that would be a start. For me, I mean, I have a master's degree, and I had never had an education or an overview on racism and how deeply ingrained it is till I watched that 20-minute video. So for me, I just felt, I don't know if ashamed is the correct word, that I had no idea. I had no idea how deeply ingrained it is in our society, in just our whole society as a whole, lawmaking, policies, everything really effective. It made me realize that I have a lot of work to do.
Thank you for sharing. Now we're going to move to Mr. J. Duke. The same question.
No, I'm old. It takes me a while to remember how to do this.
Oh, it's okay. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. The question is, what actions are needed to reform systematic racism and policing?
From what I see, and I agree, I've picked up so many neat things from Boys and Girls Club. When we go to trainings, they'll give us opportunities to learn about some of the things that have happened in history. So I agree with Jessica as far as that goes, as far as history goes. And we can learn from that. And I think that is an important thing to learn from. And then now we need to also accept the fact that I think most people that are civil, that have, regardless of their background, most people are good and they want to do good things. And I think we're getting wrapped up in the bad people and we're forgetting about all the good people that are out there. And I think if we give them the opportunity, the good people to grow, to go, wow, I would have never thought that kind of thing took place, or that was common practice back then. And then we roll into, now I can have some personal growth and move on from there. Unfortunately, we don't want to give up on those people that are the loud and bad people. But, I think we all need to grow and learn from what happened in history and then figure out what we're doing to make it better. But I think that's my take on that. So.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to move to Mr. Tim Moore. With the same question, Mr. Moore, which is, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing? Mr. Moore? Hello? Okay, we're going to circle back. Okay, and I'm going to move on to the same question to Mr. John Joyce. The question once again is, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing?
Well, I'm not a very smart person. I've been in the news business 35 years, observed all types of people. But what sticks in my mind is something a very famous person said years ago when the problems were pretty much the same. And his solution was, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. That works for me today.
Thank you for that, Mr. Joyce. And we're going to now move the same question to Mr. Jeremy Hartley. And once again, the question, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing?
Yeah, kind of in the same posture as John and others, really all of you, is just from a state of humility, knowing that I don't have all the answers. I wish I did, but I know the one who does all the answers, and that is my Savior. who has made it very clear that we are to love everyone and to tell everyone about the Savior. So in my little circle here on the planet, that's my desire to love everyone and not to love anyone with or not refrain loving people with a prejudice. And so as far as systemic racism, I think that we should be able to, I think it would be great if the community as a whole should be able to identify it and put a stop to it. But I don't have the answers as far as how to reform it.
Thank you for sharing. And now we're going to move to Mr. Francis with the same question. What actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing?
Well, I think that as the guest mentioned before, it's obviously embedded in the history of this country. You see it in Bugs Bunny cartoons and every aspect of media, and we have come a long way, but we can't erase that history. But at a certain point, I think that at what point, the question I would have is, when do we move on? And the best weapon would probably be a lot of public service announcements and obviously a lot of people that are unspoken to speak up. I mean, I've personally been on the receiving end myself. I may be listed as Caucasian, but I actually have Native American blood and Mexican blood, and my wife is of color. And I endured one time on the job a guy stating all day long that he would never marry anybody outside his race. I endured 3 gentlemen of color tell me why I didn't want a job with the school district cleaning toilets fresh out of the Marines. I was highly qualified because I was a former Marine. So that question is, what defines systemic racism? Racism is racism. I think there's good people, bad people. It transcends all colors, although obviously I know for a fact that, yes, there is embedded racism, and especially in certain aspects of employment. But we need, honestly, you almost need a hidden guard. You need people to speak out. We need some simple poolside rules that it's not accepted in society. And then we also need to create things that erase those feelings. I mean, in light of what has happened recently, there's just a lot of things that are said and comments like, when was this country was ever great, or this entire country is built on a certain race's back and stuff like that. And they're too far, because you have people that have actually literally built this country. My hero, Mr. William Mulholland, was a ditch digger, wasn't formally educated, and every faucet we turn on is because of that man. That everybody can have a dream, and it's whether or not we can get those people to bring those dreams to fruition. And probably the most important thing, like I said, is just simple poolside rules to stop it, and just make it so that it is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. As far as law enforcement, I think we need law enforcement that work and live in their community safely. I mean, we're getting to a point now where it may not be safe for law enforcement to live in a community because of, if people know where they live, it could be a problem. But we do, or either just have law enforcement that are assigned to a community their entire career until they do something wrong. To have a transient law enforcement, they could be very jaded. They can be very, very abrupt, rash, and wrong. We need more community. And more humanity. I have to state, more humanity. And that's my only take on it in life. That's all I can say.
I know I've already answered, but I wonder if I can make a comment. I thoroughly enjoyed, Francis, your take on this. I think there are 2 things that you brought out. One is a clear definition of what it is that we're talking about that we can at least delineate and agree to. And secondly, that you have married, you have a wife that is of African-American descent is fabulous, absolutely fabulous, because that does indeed.
She's not African-American, but she is of color.
I love that, because when 2 become 1, and you bring in the cultural differences, the things that are the same come out. So I just applaud you and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. And thank you also, Francis. We're going to segue into the second question of the evening for this discussion, which is directed to Mr. Tanner. What can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Well, again, I think this is a two-pronged attack that we need to have. Authority has to be recognized. Authority has to be accepted and respected. So if there's a situation where a law enforcement agent is saying that this must be done, then it must be done. Because he needs to go home that night as well. And they're in a horrible situation where they're making very split-second decisions all the time. The other side of that is that the goal of law enforcement is that we're able to move along in a society that gives the absolute most amount of freedom possible. And so if it is not against the law, then it should be treated as though it is against the law. So I think there needs to be movement on both sides of that.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to move to Ms. Bernius. I have the same question for you. What can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Sorry, hold on 1 second. Sorry. Stop. I can't right now. Please go. Sorry, my son.
Oh, it's okay.
I apologize. No, but we're good. No, we're good. No, we're good.
Okay.
So I think that mutual respect is key to having diminished those violent or deadly encounters where the community is connected both ways, which is law enforcement knowing the community, respecting the person that they're pulling over, treating them with the respect that they also deserve. I think it goes both ways. You know, you need to be able to respect law enforcement. When law enforcement asks you to do something, then you follow to make that process as simple as possible, but you also want to be treated with respect. You know, you don't want to be approached like you're less than or talked down to in a way that is unjust or unfair. So I think having that balance, and I do think that holding law enforcement accountable in different ways, including recording those interactions and always having some record of it is, I think, beneficial and helpful, because I think it would make me feel better to know that if something happens or something goes on, that there is some way to get to the bottom of what really happened when that interaction is being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to pose the same question to Mr. J. Duke. And the question, we're on question 2, which is, what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Yeah, I was making notes. You know, back in the day when things were not so nice, the punishment didn't suit the crime. The punishment was way wrong. And a lot of times it didn't even follow the course of arrest and you know, the trial and so forth. Now we're looking at a situation where, to me, we're going back the wrong way, and we're not making it so it's easy to break the law. I mean, honestly, if the speed limit was 50 miles an hour, and if you went 1 mile an hour with the speed limit, it cost you $10,000, you bet none of us would drive faster than 49 miles an hour. So we have to make sure that our punishment matches the crime, and we have to make it where it's bad. I remember I did not want to go see the principal when I was a kid. Most younger people didn't want to do that. Nowadays, I don't know that fear or concern is still there, and the respect has to be there, whether you like it or not. And you don't win a battle face to face and front with confrontation. You win it by flowing and working with people and listening to what they have to say, and then adjusting accordingly. You know, we've talked a little bit about the idea of religion and so forth. Religion is a very vast thing, but for the most part, all religions fall back into a philosophical study. And right and wrong, almost in any philosophy book, is still the same. And we need to teach people to be, philosophical angles of right and wrong. That will help us dramatically in what we intend to do and how we're going to help other people. If we let ourselves keep going the way we're going, we're going to end up like New York City was back in the 70s, where crime was out of control and everybody, it didn't matter because no one was going to get arrested. And they had to turn around and correct that whole scenario, that whole problem, by starting at the simplest point, which was taking care of the little laws that were being broken to build everybody up to starting to respect the law again. And we should, instead of us learning from what New York had to redo, we're following the footsteps. We're letting ourselves not enforce our laws, and then we're going to fall back to that, where we're going to have to then start all over again to start reinforcing the laws and bringing them back. So we need to have laws. You don't want to make a rule you can't enforce. You don't want to make a law that people don't respect. But you got to make sure that it's unfavorable to break the law. We need to get back into that.
I think that some of these laws are also. Did someone was there someone wanted to add something? I heard someone chime in.
And then my last thought. Was anybody else? My last thought was, I was rattling on, but that's okay. My last thought is, I think people too need to understand. We're watching our news, and I think honestly, if we're going to learn, if we want to know what news is, we're not going to get it off of one news report. And we have to understand the news is there to sell the commercials that are around the news, whether it's Facebook or the television or whatever. We're getting sold a lot of information in tiny little bits that may not be the most accurate, but it draws people in to watch the news. And unfortunately, it can build anger. And we need to understand, again, we got to fall back into the fact I think most people in this country are good people. Sometimes we're misinformed. So, my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Now we're going to move over to Mr. John Joyce with the same question, which is, what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
We can continue to support law enforcement personnel visiting the classrooms and introducing themselves to the children and having the children see what law enforcement people are like up close. I can still remember the days long ago when the local policeman visited our class. I can still remember seeing the gun. I can still remember seeing the badge, the uniform. But I can still remember the nice person that police officer was. And I think law enforcement people also can learn how wonderful the children are, no matter what age. So as a community, we should continue to support law enforcement people visiting classrooms.
Thank you for that, Mr. Joyce. And now we're going to move the question to Mr. Jeremy Hartley. The same question, which is, what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Well, Mr. Joyce stole my answer, because I also highly agree that we can have our law enforcement officers into our schools. They are in our schools, of course, right now, but when I'm a graduate of Antelope Valley High School, and the law enforcement officer, I didn't even know his name. He really didn't talk to anyone, and he was kind of in his office. He was doing his job, but I just wonder if they were able to interact. I remember Deputy Horner in 3rd grade taught me how to not smoke because he brought a machine in and showed me how, what a cigarette did to a lung. And when I was a kid, I was like, oh, these law enforcement officers are pretty approachable. And if we were to be able to do that in our elementary and our middle and high school programs and have more of a relationship built, a sense of community between law enforcement the community, I think would be huge. And then also to piggyback off of Mr. Duke's answer as well, there needs to be respect for the law, right? I mean, by definition, they are law enforcement officers, so they have to enforce these laws. That's what the state or the city or the county is hiring them to do. And so we need to, if we're being asked to do something like to pull over, or to put my window down, or to turn off my music, I should be respectful, so that way I can make the interaction between me and that law enforcement officer as easy and as polite and as safe as possible.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to ask the same question to you, Mr. Francis. What can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
The last guest kind of touched a little bit on, I would just simply say compliance. Compliance is key, especially if the community has the thought process that they are victimized in that way, then all the more reason to comply. I personally have had a sheriff one time draw his weapon on my property. My wife was giving him an escort, and my dog ran up behind everybody, and she was between the dog and the sheriff, and he drew his weapon. And some may be a little trigger happy, obviously, but I would have to say that an officer or two officers running between houses at 2 o'clock in the morning with a strobe light shining from above, and with not the ability to see exactly what they're dealing with, they don't have a lot of time to make that discretion of whether or not that person is going to kill them or not. And compliance is key. Lay down as fast as you can. Put your arms. Even myself, I got pulled over up north a short time back, and I wasted no time to put my hands on that steering wheel. It was dark. It was in a city I was unfamiliar with. And that goes a long way, respectfulness and politeness, and it just goes a very long way to keep yourself alive. And aside from that, you can't determine what every officer's actions are going to be, and all the more reason to comply, to know that you did all the best you can do, because they can be dangerous as well. As in the Marine Corps we have a term. There's always that 10%, and so. You should just simply comply, regardless of what you think of them. Just simply comply, and know this: that every simulation, and civilians are invited to do these simulations. That most video simulations, the result is the same for civilian, even worse for civilian houses, and doing all the above. He's probably going to empty his whole clip in you if you don't comply. It's just a sad fact. As far as changing that, the only tool I see now is compliance. And another thing is maybe more crime prevention. There's a reason why these guys are all bodybuilders and are all armed up and tense and ready to pull the trigger. They're dealing with some very bad people nowadays. So there's some very bad people out there. Anybody here knows that we can give you coordinates to any location, and that's not a location you would go to at midnight. But yet these guys are there to protect people that frequent those locations, that have to stop and get gas and have to do stuff. The fact is, their job's not easy. But another example would be we'll learn from other law enforcement agencies that don't have those issues. The sheriff's department obviously has their issues. Other cities have their issues. Take some examples from cities that don't have those issues and have crime as well. Other than that, I don't have an answer other than compliance. That's all I can say.
Thank you for sharing. I see that we have Crystal in participation. I don't see you on the cam, but would you like to participate in the discussion?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, cool.
We missed you on the first round. Would you like to be included in this discussion?
Yeah, I'm okay with this question.
Okay. Would you like me to repeat it for you?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I kind of want to piggyback on a few ideas. I like the idea of introducing like having like a show and tell with cops in schools, but we also have to remember that at this moment there's so much trauma with bringing in cops into schools. So I think that before we introduce or reintroduce cops into a school setting, I think that they have to be reintroduced into the community before we can take that type of step. Because I work with adolescents, with high school students, and I do have some that have trauma with cops based on their experiences that they have seen in their lifetime. So like I've seen kids like, yeah, if somebody comes in here, like I just freak out. So it's a scary thing to like just automatically go into something like that. So I feel like once again, before we go into something like that, like reintroduce the police officers into our communities and like have, community nights where you get, they get to introduce themselves into the community, get to know community members on a more personal level. And I also think that some retraining might be nice. I know that, there is some truth in like complying and whatnot, but also there are some very unnecessary aggressive behaviors, even when people are complying. So I think that cops may need a little bit more training psychologically and negotiating when dealing with the community, because we do have a lot of people who are good people and they get stopped. So we have that stigma that you get stopped, automatically you did something bad. And it could be something so simple as a speeding ticket or a taillight, but there's still that stigma that you get stopped or you get approached by the police and you automatically are in trouble. So definitely some, like I said, some psychology training, some negotiating training, mental health screenings for police officers, because they do go through traumatic events. They do, they are experiencing situations. We don't, I think having stuff like that be more frequent to protect our police officers and their mental health is also important. And that's basically what I was thinking, joining into the conversation.
Well, thank you for sharing. And by any chance, would you like to add any input for the first question that we presented to the group? I'm not sure why I missed you on the first go round. Did you just join?
I was actually in a different group, and then my phone, like the Zoom call dropped, and I'm on my phone. I was having issues with my microphone. So yeah.
Well, would you like an opportunity to answer the first question, which was, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism in policing?
I think that education is really important. It's really big. I think practicing respect and coalitions within our educational system, celebrating diversity and connecting to similarities in the educational system can harvest something positive for situations like this.
Thank you for sharing, Crystal.
Thank you.
And now we are on to the last question for this discussion, and we're going to begin with Mr. Tanner. The final question is, are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they? And what recommendations would you suggest?
I guess I'm going to go with my experience as a counselor. I am more and more participating in family dynamic and especially divorce, remarriage type of things, where children are having a tremendously unstable home life. And so their identity is being developed by them through media or other children. So, this isn't new necessarily. In 1955, the divorce rate was 4%. And now we don't even know what the divorce rate is because there's so much cohabitation. So certainly I would tell you that this is both foundational and systemic, and that is, if the family is weak, then the identity is going to be weak. If the identity is going to be weak, then choices priorities are going to be skewed, and poor choices are going to be made. No matter what race, it makes no difference as far as the race is concerned. So I also think that we're doing about everything that we can do. The faith community certainly is trying. I don't know how effective, or I wouldn't tell you. You never want to have the counselor do the state of the church address. But I think strengthening families, keeping fathers involved, both in loving their wives and passing on the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord to the next generation, so that there is a coherent value system and morality that makes sense to the kids. I think these are things that are, again, foundational, but they're also a huge part of the problem. We have a bunch of people out there that are not clear about who they are or why they do what they do, and I think that's a problem. Certainly simplistic, but that's what I've got so far. By the way, I think I should be able to answer last one of these. I'm just kidding.
Well, this is the last question, so sorry about the order. I'm just going in the way they appear. I'm going clockwise, and I switch the screen, and I go clockwise again. But we very much appreciate your input and your feedback. I'm going to ask the same question to you, Ms. Bernias, and the question is, are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they, and what recommendations would you suggest?
I think definitely the homeless situation in the Antelope Valley is a big deal. You know, we had the shelter closed down. I think it's been almost 2 years now. We're going into our second year. I know that the city of Lancaster has some homeless assistance like projects or apartments that they're developing. But I think that the problem is really big. I've never thought that I would drive around in our community and see so many people living in tents under the freeways. It weighs on me a lot, you know, to have my children see that. It definitely is huge when they ask me, like, why can't we do anything about it? So I am very saddened by the presence in the community. I think that the shelter closing down had a huge effect on it. So to provide more resources, more for the community to be able to assist in that sort of situation and problem, I think is definitely something that I'd like to see more attention given to.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to present the same question to you, Mr. J. Duke. The question is, are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they? What recommendations would you suggest?
And I'll start off by saying right away, I'm very happy that I'm not the first one to speak. So thank you, number one and number two, to make my life a lot easier. I was thinking it's simplest term I would start off with, we need control. Law enforcement, we need to make sure we have enough law enforcement and they're able to be out there to help us out. And have control to figure out how we're going to work with our homeless population, because they, none of us want to have our houses broken into. We don't want to have any issues take place. But if we were homeless and we had children and we needed to take care of them, I don't think any of us would stop and hesitate to do something to take care of our children. So some of these people, their actions, we would probably look at in hindsight and say they're justified. So we got to help them. We got to take care of business and figure out what we can do around that. And then, of course, the youth. We got to stop them from becoming the criminals that they can become if we don't intervene. Again, it starts off in the simplest form. If you can get away with taking a candy bar, then you can go to hubcaps and then maybe steal the whole car later. You've got to create laws that you can enforce and then enforce them so that we don't end up having people in prisons and spending so much more to have somebody in prison versus education. I got some of this out of a boys club presentation, but to put a kid into an after-school program or to do something with them, whether even it's not Boys and Girls Club, but something, that's, you know, you can spend about $5,000 or $8,000 a year. If you put them in prison, you've got $40,000 to $80,000 a year. We've got to quit building prisons. We've got to start building youth centers and community centers to help people out. That's going to make a difference. We don't need any more prisons. The last thing I would say to add to that is the public relations campaign. I think, again, anybody that gets hurt is one too many. Any child that has a problem is one too many. But there are tens of thousands of arrests that take place every day. There are tens of thousands of interactions that police officers do every day. The percentage of failures on their part is got to be microscopic. And yes, one is one too many. But people, we have to realize and learn that they are trained. They do feel bad. They do hesitate before they would risk hurting another human being. They're people like we are. They're parents and children and grandparents. We care. So we can't just assume that they're there to make somebody's life miserable. They're there because they picked a career that they want to make a difference in. And we've all had that unpleasant moment with a police officer. I've even had it myself. And it's weird. You kind of walk away from it like, wow, that guy really shouldn't do that job. But he was one out of hundreds of thousands. So we need to make sure everybody knows. And the police really have a very poor PR campaign. They need to let people know they really are good people. And the young people and all of us need to realize that. So there you go.
Thank you for sharing. And we're going to move this question on to Mr. John Joyce. And again, the question is, are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they? And what recommendations would you suggest?
Yes, this is a specific emergency that's been brought about by the pandemic, but it's hurting the county's ability to get the economy going again. A new business has to file in LA County what's called a fictitious business name statement in a newspaper published for successive weeks. Before the newspaper can publish that, they need a number from the county recorder's office. It used to take 10 days. Now it's taking 6 to 8 weeks. Some of these poor people trying to get loans, trying to start businesses, trying to open a bank account can't do it for 6 or 8 weeks, a delay. So the solution is to empower the newspapers that are publishing these documents anyway and dealing with these people anyway, empower them to take in the information, submit it to the clerk online, get a number so these people can open their businesses and start earning a living. I know this is just a small, specific instance, but the pandemic has brought this on. It's not the recorder's total problem that it exists at all, but a solution needs to be arrived at that allows these businesses to get going.
Thank you for that, Mr. Joyce. And the same question will now be presented to Mr. Francis. And that question again is, are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they? And what recommendations do you suggest?
I would say the biggest issue facing our community here in the future, near future, but simply a lot of it is just sheer ruthlessness in the job place. And whether the government needs to come in and create a large civil works project, such as something equivalent to the Hoover Dam or the aqueduct system that I mentioned earlier regarding Mr. Mulholland, we need to simply build in this country again and couple that with education incentives. You know, if a person does have a pick and shovel job, that job coincides with educational incentives. In other words, it's not a place to move them through their entire life, but it is a place to propel them through life. And if I can use another analogy, it would simply be like the pipeline in Alaska. You know, people worked on that project for decades. They not only earned a living, but they put their kids through college, and the effects were very lasting. And communities were built. In the case of Hoover Dam, communities were built. We need civil works to step in. Otherwise, some of the big monsters in the room, such as automation and then just simple unforgiveness on the job place itself. I mean, these places like Amazon are ruthless monsters. You walk through a turnstile and you are a machine. Not everybody has the luxury of working into a freelance workplace and express creativity. I just think that's the biggest thing moving forward is just job sustainability. And if we just simply have too many people jumping off the merry-go-round, you're going to have a lot of people standing on the corner watching high-speed pursuits. That's just my thought. We need to get creative, and it's outside the pond of LA. We need to build something that transcends this entire country. We need to build something here. Maybe it's a water system. Maybe it's something that, to move water from the upper Missouri and Mississippi to the west and build the west for a while. I don't have that answer, but I do know that the way things are going, we're not going to change anything the way things are now. There's no jobs in the future. I don't care if you have Amazon come to the Antelope Valley or anything else. There's nothing that's sustainable. Automation will just keep bumping people to the street, and so will the harsh reality of a harsh work environment. That's all.
Thank you for sharing. And last but not least, we're going to go to you, Crystal, with the final question of the evening, which is, are there any other emerging... Sorry, got a little jumbled. Let me start over. Are there any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed? If so, what are they, and what recommendations would you suggest?
I think I'm going to just focus on the recommendations. I think that, listening, having compassion, kindness, and being giving. And with that being said, are we giving, like somebody said, empowering people who need empowering financially? Are we providing those resources, the education, the housing support, the mental health care support, healthcare as well, parenting? Are we supporting the areas where there is a large need for? So more leading with the question more than anything.
Thank you for that, Crystal. And that's actually a great segue. So we have about 20 more minutes left in this small group. And at the close of the group, we're going to go back into the larger group as it was before we came into these breakout rooms. And we're going to have to present recommendations to the group. So really quick, I'm just going to jot down, if we could just all take 1 minute going back around the circle, and I'll start with you, Crystal, even though it might be redundant. Your recommendation, just like a one-liner, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing? Recommendation.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I'm so sorry. Have you had my earphone? Can you repeat that?
Oh yes, if you just have a quick one word or one line recommendation as to what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing.
I think listening, for sure. Listening, that could take a needs assessment from all the population in general. Have the people, let them express what resources have been a struggle to attain, and so letting giving the population the opportunity to express, and then hopefully as a community we can listen, and then hopefully we can create solutions from there based on current trends.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Francis, I present you with the same question. If you just have any quick recommendation in regards to question 1, what actions are needed to reform systemic racism in policing?
Talk and listen.
Okay, talk and listen. Thank you for that very much. And I'm going to present you the same question, Mr. John Joyce. If you have a quick recommendation as to what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing.
The actions today should be what they were recommended to be many, many years ago. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself, and all of us should remind everyone and try harder ourselves to do the same thing.
Thank you for that. And Mr. J. Duke, I have the same question for you. Just a quick recommendation to present to the large group. What actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing?
Information and recognition of what's going on, staying up on things that are happening.
Thank you for that. And Ms. Bernias, the same question for you. If you have any quick recommendation as to what actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing.
Education on the long history of systemic racism in our laws.
Thank you for sharing. And Mr. Tanner, the same question for you. Any recommendation that you would like to present to the group in maybe one word or one line? What actions are needed to reform systemic racism and policing?
Build relationships between people that disagree.
Okay. Okay, and we're going to just do the same thing really quickly for the last 2 questions because we still have about 15 minutes. I'm just trying to make sure we have a lot of substance to provide to the entire group. So, Crystal, if you just have any quick recommendation, one line or one word, what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Can I have some time to think about that?
Oh, that's fine. Oh, and please note that if you don't have anything else to add, you don't have to. But if maybe you left something out or something just came to mind, you can chime in. But if you're fine with what you've added already, that's completely acceptable. Mr.
I also
Francis?
I wanted to add, I want to highlight, I guess, building relationships with people who don't agree. Like, that's a good one because we are going to disagree. And I think showing people how to healthily and safely disagree, I think I like that.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And Mr. Francis, would you like to add anything else as far as recommendations for question number 2? What can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
Again, I will just say compliance, and we just need to implement some tools out there to change the relationship. Maybe a few more warnings when people get pulled over, and maybe some free chili dogs at a local restaurant or something to just restore a lot of the harm or distrust, or however you want to call it. Other than that, I don't see a solution in the short term as far as the confrontations. It's just a really tough world out there. It really, really is. And then just identifying who the bad players are. There's a lot of law enforcement that, again, I had it happen in my own front yard, is there's guys that just like to pull their gun. So we have to identify who those people are. That's just simply it. Yeah, they have to be identified. They exist. I mean, there's people that are just plain bad people, regardless of what profession they're in. That's all I can say. As far as what to do about it, we just have to identify it.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to present the same question to you, Mr. John Joyce. If you have anything that you would like to add as far as recommendations as to what we can do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents.
Well, that's a simple one. Follow your example to moderate among people. You've done an excellent job, and thank you for doing it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, and Mr. J. Duke, I'm going to ask you the same question. If you have any final recommendations with regards to the second question, what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
I am pretty satisfied with what I said earlier. I don't know that I add too much to it, but I do want to compliment John and Crystal and Francis as well. What you're saying is very profound, and I think it's what we all understand and what we've done tonight. You got to have dialogue, and you have to have a foundation for the discussion. This philosophy and logic right there. It's you have to assume that the person you're talking to does not want to hurt you, doesn't want to insult you. They want to take and just have a moment, an aha moment. We all like those. And I think that if we had more of those, and they realized the population that's so angry right now to realize most police officers, and there's no most, any police officer that's a good police officer doesn't want bad police officer. They want to find out about that bad guy, and they want to get rid of him too. So the way to get rid of the bad police officer is to follow the logical chain of command, not to get upset at the next one you see that is a loving father and goes to church and cares about his family and community. It's to find a way to take care of that person that is not doing their job well. Because we had a gentleman speak at our Rotary Club that's been in law enforcement for a while, and he said exactly that. We don't want that person. Nobody does. So as soon as we find out about them, we want them to go away too. So I think that the community needs to understand no one, including cops, want a bad cop. So there you go.
Thank you for that. And this is such a great discussion. Everybody's input is so valuable and is so informative and so helpful. And I really enjoy the way that it's just been flowing and everybody's giving such great input. Okay, and I'm going to ask you, Ms. Bernias, if you have anything to add to the second question as far as recommendations for what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
My summary would be mutual respect and accountability.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Tanner, I have the same question for you. If you have any further recommendations as to what can we do as a community to avoid deadly confrontations between police officers and residents?
I'm going to come off of this group. It's been, again, I so appreciate hearing what they're saying. I would just say slow down. The rush to judgment on both sides is killer. I think we need to be careful of the rhetoric in terms of media, and I don't care if it's CNN or Fox News. I think the biggest issue is fear. Fear is driving this thing, and fear is being fed to us over and over and over and over and over and over again. And sometimes irrational. Sometimes rational, it's true, but sometimes it's irrational. So I just think we need to slow down and stop rushing to judgment.
Thank you for sharing. And we are on the final question once again, just with any last and final recommendations before time runs out. If anyone would like to add, I'm going to start again with Crystal. If you would like to add anything at all as far as final recommendations from the group for any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed and the recommendations themselves.
I think this roundabout that we had kind of covered all of them. So I'm good.
Okay. And you, Mr. Francis? Any final recommendations as to other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed?
Just investment in our community. If funds are supposed to come up here, then let's get them up here. And simply a lot of the answers have to do with our tax dollars going in the right place. Obviously, we've had 4 of the worst child abuse cases take place up here in Antelope Valley. And I started mentioning my opinion on that on the first one and the second one, and simply because those funds don't make it up here. And by the time a lot of government officials from down below come up here, whether it's hazmat, whether it's child protective services, they're coming from a town that's not familiar with our area. So a lot needs to be corrected. That's my only input. And other than, yes, everybody just try to be good to each other and fight for what you deserve. And we're just underserved up here. Other than that, there's a lot of good people, and especially the people that have joined this conversation. We are a minority. Be aware of that. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much for your input. I'm sorry if it sounds repetitive, but it's like, I don't know. I usually don't know what else to say. Thank you sounds repetitive. It's very sincere. Mr. John Joyce, I have the same question for you. If you have any final recommendations as to any other emerging community issues that you would like to see addressed?
I'd like to recommend that LA County Supervisor Barger of the 5th District start using this formula for other challenges. This is great what's happened today. And I think this could spread and take away a lot of the problems that come from people being suspicious and fearful of other people. Keep doing, Catherine, what you're doing here. This was a great idea.
I think we lost Joanne.
I think so too.
Linda, do you want to take over?
Yes, because I am taking the notes, and if there are any final, the same question that she answers, is there any final solutions that you may have that we can present? Because we could talk all day, but if we don't have a solution, then we would still be talking. So it's really great. I like some of the solutions that I have heard in the conversation. So if anyone else have any final comments that they would like to say, go right ahead.
I'll step in here real quick, if I may.
Okay.
Francis here. I collected 480 signatures. I've tried to initiate some road improvements in my area, and that's a story within itself. But taking those signatures, and I'm probably only 1/4 of the way through. It's just the thing that alarmed me is just the residences that I went to that have just socially distanced themselves long before we ever had this epidemic. People, and you could see those. You can see those people as you walk in their property. They're secluded behind curtains, and they're obviously in a bad way. And just as how you could come up with a way of reaching out to those people and helping them before they go over the precipice of mental illness or of something else horrible. But I just saw a lot of that, and a lot more than I used to see. And like I said, if we don't address some of these issues of creating sustainability, our health services, our mental health services will continually be overwhelmed, and there's no solution. If I can give an analogy to that, if a resident was to call on a neighbor saying, hey, they're burning a horse carcass in their backyard, and the fire department comes up to the gate and just tells them to put the fire out, well, that's hardly solving the problem. if our tax dollars at work, we need to know that that job is completed. Otherwise, we're just chasing our tail. That's just simply my take on stuff. Again, like I said, I've walked up to every single door in my neighborhood, 11,000 residents to be specific. But in this last occasion, I'm at 480. And compared to the other times I've done this, is I'm seeing a lot of people just getting off the merry-go-round, and it's scary.
Anyone else? I think you all have done a fantastic job. Mr. Chuck, I know you said you just wanted to listen, but do you have a comment that you might want to say, how you thought about what you heard, and even might have a solution for us?
Oh, yeah. As you folks were commenting, I was saying, oh, good thing I'm not saying anything. I'd just be giving like Kathryns Barger campaign speeches or something like that. But I thank you all very much for your comments. I know several of the people who've been involved in this. I've known them for years. And so I thank you for taking part. I was taking notes too. So I'm going to be taking these back to our office, and so especially Mr. Joyce's comment that we should use the same kind of format for other issues, because I know there's other issues out there in the community that some of the people who are involved today in today's session are anxious to bring up. Homelessness is one for sure. I know the impact of the virus on businesses and the economy, jobs for residents and the economy. Those are all. I know there's other people out there who are taking part today that are concerned about that. So I just want to say thanks for taking part, and I'm taking notes to bring back to our office.
Well, we appreciate you we appreciate you being here, because when you get the word out, someone said about having a more forums like this, but I think they're probably planning, I think, at least 2 more. And then we'll see from there, because I think we want, it's going to start with the community. And I think with this last go round, with some issues that have gone on, people are upset. And so, but I think there's a lot of them out there trying to find a solution. I don't think defunding the police is one of them. We need to work with them, and there just need to be some changes made, with how someone said respect. They need to respect us, and we need to respect them, and we need to follow directions when they give them to us. We may feel that they're not right, but, to keep yourself safe. I think one of the gentlemen says when he stopped, he put his hands on the steering wheel, so that they can see his hands. And that's a good thing, and we just need to have these type of conversations, and have these type of conversations with our young people. So I appreciate all of you being here, and I really enjoyed listening to you and all of the comments that you had. And I think that we're on the right track. We're on the right track because this is the start. And, to start somewhere, because all of you together and all of the other groups that are out there, we're going to come up with some solution. And because that's what the lawmakers want to hear. They don't want to just hear the complaints. They want to hear some solution. Hi, Joanne. We lost you for a while.
Oh, yes. I don't know what happened. My phone lost signal, and then I was trying to get back in the room. I had to turn my phone all the way off and back on. So I'm so sorry about that, but it looks like the conversation is flowing well.
Yes, and we got Mr. Chuck to give us some input of how he felt about it, and so it was really good to hear that, and he's going to take it back to his organization. So I told them that I think they all have did a great job. So I don't know how much more time we have, Joanne.
We have about 5 more minutes. That's what I was told when I got let back into the room.
Well, I think they have given they've given all of the solutions that they have, and so we're just waiting, until we go back, join the other group.
Okay.
And I would like to say, Joanne, you did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
You kept it on track.
Oh, and then you see the pop-up that just came 1 minute before breakout rooms close. So we have 1 more minute.
Okay.
Would you like to present the recommendations, or how do you want to present them?
I can if you like, since I have, since I wrote them down.
Okay.
I can do that for you.
That'll be excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Vaughn.